Hey, Stone here with Wood and Stone. Today we're going to do a bandsaw tune-up. A lot of people are nervous to work with bandsaws because they've never had them correctly tuned up. Once you do this, a bandsaw will become a preferred tool in your shop. For those of you that don't know, this is a bandsaw. They do make them bigger and they do make them smaller. This is a 14-inch one. So what we're going to do as we talk about the tune-up is we're just going to go over some main steps that I focus on. I start out with a quality blade. So that's the Carter 5/8 green blade. This is what I use in classes. You can definitely get into smaller blades as you get more skilled. The risk with using a smaller blade is that you risk snapping them if you don't have the techniques down and you twist in too much. So I start out with 5/8. To get going, and then as you get more skilled, you can definitely move up from there. The next things that we're going to talk about is correct location on the wheels for your blade, the correct tension on your blade, the correct setting for your guides that are right here, how far away those need to be on the blade, and then having your table and fences square. With the drunken cutting board, we don't need the fences. Again, this is not a super accurate type situation. This is much more playful woodworking. Is one of the reasons I like it is if you mess up your cut, like that's okay. Just don't tell anybody and it'll be fine. So this is why it's called a bandsaw, because your blade actually goes around this wheel and there's another wheel in the bottom. So it goes all the way around up the arm here and then down here. And this is where you cut. Bandsaws are really great because you can, the blade is smaller. So you can do a bunch of twists and curves, and you can also crank this up and you can do really tall cuts, which are like resawing is what it's referred to. So you can cut really tall boards thin if you need to. Not something that we're going to do today, but all kinds of kind of around the tool that we're talking about. The wheel of a bandsaw has a crown to it. So what we want is we want the wells of your teeth, or the gullet of your teeth, depending on who you're talking to, it's the same thing. That's the backside of the tooth. So you have the point and then you have the very far backside. You want that at the halfway point, so at the peak of that wheel. And what that does is it makes your blade the front end of the cut, and the tail will follow where the front is going. Versus if you have it move forward, it kind of wobbles on that wheel, and it creates, that's where you get a lot of wobble in your cuts. The other spot that you get a lot of wobble in your cut is your saw blade actually, the teeth aren't in alignment. They're kind of crisscross this way. So one points this direction, the next one points this direction. That's stamped that way. So they push the steel out of whack to create that. If you heat up the steel, in this case, it'll be done with friction. If you heat it up, those will snap back into an alignment. And when that happens, it cuts less like a saw and more like a knife. So it's going to follow the path of least resistance, usually the grain in the wood, as opposed to where you want the cut to actually happen, like a saw blade. So the way that we avoid that is we have our guides. You want them so that there's just a little bit of daylight. All we're trying to do is if that just starts to move a little bit, then it holds it in place. But we don't want those consistently spinning on your blade, because that builds up the friction, which will snap those teeth back into alignment, which then causes problems later on down the road. The next thing that we want is we want the correct amount of tension on our blade. A lot of people pay attention to, you'll see on the inside of your bandsaw, there's a lot of them have a little chart that's like, if you're using an 1/8 inch blade, do this. If you're using a 1/4 inch blade, then this is the correct. And that needle will move as you put the tension on there. My suggestion is completely ignore that chart. That chart was set up under perfect conditions with blades that have perfect length, and there can be different tensions in the steel, all kinds of different variables. What we want to do is down here in the corner, you want to be pushing this and have about 1/8 of an inch of. But you can see on my 5/8 blade, I am past the 3/4 inch setting on the bandsaw here. It's because I completely ignored that. I'm looking for this tension here. Now, when you have this set up here with your guide set up correctly over here, you're going to do the exact same thing on your bottom wheel. So that all happens at the same time, but it's the same concept. And the same thing with your bottom guides, just a little bit of space there. And you want the guide to be sitting behind that same gullet that your wheel is centered on. I always say measure 51 times, cut once. That means measure everything, not just your particular measurement. You want to make sure your table is square to the blade. You want to make sure your fence is square to the blade before you make important cuts. On this one, we want to make sure it's square because if you're at an angle, we end up with the same problem that I was talking about with a jigsaw, where the bottom piece gets cut at a different distance, there are a different setting than the top piece. So when you start to flip-flop these around, they don't align. Big problem that I see a lot of people end up with. This is how you avoid that. You just make sure that your table is square to your blade. Then when we cut through, the bottom is cut at the same spot that the top is cut at. And that's a basic bandsaw setup. Once you have your bandsaw tuned up like this, you're going to be surprised at how well this machine runs. So now that we have everything tuned up, we're going to close this back up and get ready for actually making our cuts on the boards that we set up earlier. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe and get out there and make some sawdust.